It was a stormy evening when 12-year-old Danny found himself alone in his family's old, creaky house. His parents had gone out for the night, leaving him to fend for himself. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the rain pounded against the roof like 1,000 tiny drums. The power had flickered out about an hour ago, plunging the house into darkness. The only light came from the small flashlight Danny held in his trembling hand. Danny wasn't usually scared of the dark, but something about this night felt different. The house, built over a century ago, had always had a strange aura, with its narrow hallways, creaking floors, and the old locked attic that his parents had forbidden him from entering. But tonight, Danny felt drawn to it. He had heard the stories, the whispered rumors from the neighborhood kids about strange noises, shadows moving in the windows when no one was home, and the unexplained cold spots that seemed to follow you around the house. Danny had always brushed them off as just that, stories. But as the wind continued to howl and the shadows seemed to deepen around him, those tales began to feel all too real. It started with a noise, a soft, almost imperceptible, scratching sound, like something small and sharp dragging across wood. It was faint at first, barely audible over the storm outside. Danny stopped in his tracks, his heart skipping a beat. He listened carefully, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound. It seemed to be coming from above, from the attic. Danny's heart pounded in his chest as he pointed the flashlight toward the ceiling. The sound was persistent, growing louder, and with it, the uneasy feeling in his stomach intensified. He tried to tell himself it was just the wind, maybe a tree branch scraping against the house, but deep down, he knew it was something else. The attic had always been off limits, a place his parents warned him to stay away from. "It's dangerous up there," they would say, full of old junk, sharp nails, and who knows what else. But tonight, the attic felt like it was calling to him. He couldn't explain it, but the pull was strong, almost irresistible. With a mix of fear and curiosity, Danny found himself moving toward the narrow staircase that led to the attic. The door at the top was always locked, but as he approached, he noticed something strange. The door was slightly ajar, a thin sliver of darkness visible between the frame and the door itself. His parents had never left it open before. Had they forgotten to lock it? Or had something, or someone, opened it? Danny hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, his flashlight beam trembling as it pointed up into the blackness. Every instinct told him to turn back, to run downstairs and wait for his parents to come home. But the scratching sound was louder now, more insistent, and he felt that inexplicable pull drawing him upward. Taking a deep breath, Danny placed one foot on the first step, then another. The stairs creaked loudly under his weight, each sound echoing through the silent house. As he climbed, the air grew colder, and the faint smell of dust and old wood filled his nostrils. His hand shook as he reached out to push the attic door open further, revealing the dark, narrow space beyond. The scratching noise stopped abruptly as the door swung open, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed in on him from all sides. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a large, shadowy room filled with old furniture covered in white sheets, boxes stacked haphazardly, and cobwebs hanging from the rafters. In the center of the room was an old wooden rocking chair, slowly creaking back and forth, though no one was sitting in it. Danny's breath caught in his throat as he stepped into the attic. The air was thick with dust, and the cold seemed to seep into his bones. He scanned the room, the flashlight beam sweeping across the shadowy shapes of forgotten things. The attic was silent now, but the oppressive feeling of being watched was overwhelming. He took a step forward, and that's when he noticed it. A faint outline in the darkness, crouched in the far corner of the attic, just beyond the reach of his flashlight. Suddenly, the doll's head snapped up, its eyes locking onto Danny's. The twisted grin grew impossibly wide, and a low, guttural voice emanated from the tiny figure. "You shouldn't have come here." Danny stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, casting wild shadows around the room. The doll stood up, its limbs creaking as it moved toward him with unnatural speed. Danny scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from his chest. The attic door slammed shut, trapping him in a teed. The darkness closed in around him as the doll's voice echoed through the room, growing louder, more menacing. "You're mine now," it hissed, its glass eyes glowing with a sinister light. Danny's hands fumbled for the doorknob, but it was cold and wouldn't budge. He pounded on the door, screaming for help, but his voice was swallowed by the thick, oppressive darkness. The doll was closer now, its small feet tapping against the wooden floor, the sound of its movements mocking the sound of Danny's own desperate attempts to escape. He could feel its presence behind him, the air growing colder, the smell of rot filling his nostrils. His hands were shaking uncontrollably as he clawed at the door, his nails splintering on the old wood. The doll's voice was in his ear now, a whisper of pure malice. "No one's coming for you." In one final desperate move, Danny turned around, grabbing the flashlight and shining it directly at the doll. The light hit its face, and for a moment, Danny thought he saw something behind the porcelain, a dark, twisted shadow that writhed and pulsed as if trying to break free. But the moment passed, and the doll lunged at him, its tiny hands reaching for his throat. Danny screamed, the sound tearing through the darkness, and everything went black. When Danny's parents returned home later that night, they found the house in darkness, the front door slightly ajar. Panic gripped them as they rushed inside, calling for their son. But the house was silent. They searched every room, their fear growing with each passing moment. Finally, they reached the attic. The door was closed, but it wasn't locked. They opened it slowly, calling Danny's name. But there was no answer. As they stepped into the attic, the light from their flashlight revealed an old wooden rocking chair, creaking slowly back and forth, as if someone had just been sitting in it. On the floor, in the center of the room, was Danny's flashlight, still on, casting a dim light across the dusty floor. And in the corner, where the wardrobe stood, they found the doll, its porcelain face cracked, its glass eyes empty, its smile twisted into a sinister grin. But Danny was nowhere to be found. The search for Danny lasted for weeks, but he was never found. The police had no leads, and the case eventually went cold. But his parents never stopped looking, haunted by the memory of that stormy night and the doll that still sat in their attic, watching, waiting. For every now and then, late at night, when the wind howls and the rain pounds against the roof, they can hear a faint scratching sound coming from the attic, as if something or someone is still up there, trying to get out.